I don't remember a time when I wasn't into aviation. My dad was a flyer. Hanging out on Air Force bases, you always had chances to slip through the airport fence and go watch the planes on the runway and things like that. I had made a list of 10 aircraft that I wanted to fly. And there were only 2 there that I could ever afford to own. One of them was the Sopwith Camel. I loved the way it looked, I loved the way it flew, I loved the distinctive appearance of it. I really think that the Sopwith Camel sort of epitomized that entire era of aviation. And it found me as much as I found it.
Midlife is a reckoning, a time to pick up dreams we left on the table. Our lives were transformed in midlife when we discovered ice climbing, rock climbing, and mountaineering.
We're Ray and Jackie, and we're on a search for inspiring stories of other midlifers who are redefining what's over the hill. Life takes us down all kinds of roads, and sometimes away from our dreams. For Bill, that was commanding a World War I biplane. But Midlife Mavericks are able to find a road that takes them back. The end of this road is where Bill is fulfilling a dream he's had since he was 3. Morning, Bill.
Hey Ray, how are things, man?
Yeah, good.
Good to see you. I don't remember a time when I wasn't into aviation. I had made a list of 10 aircraft that I wanted to fly. And there were only 2 there that I could ever afford to own. One of them was the Sopwith Camel. I loved the way it looked, I loved the way it flew, I loved the distinctive appearance of it. I really think that the Sopwith Camel sort of epitomized that entire era of aviation. And it found me as much as I found it.
We met in March 2016 online and finally got our first date at the end of the month. An hour into our conversation, he said, I have to tell you, I'm buying this plane. It's a Sopwith Camel. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So he showed me pictures of the plane, which, you know, it's a pretty good looking plane. And I could tell that he was basically trying to convince himself that he was buying it as much as trying to gauge the water to see whether I would say, well, you know, this is a crazy idea. So at some point I had to say, stop. I climb mountains. So I understand calculated risk. I assume that you know what you're doing and that you're going to get the training and that you're going to do this as safely as you can. And that's what I do about mountaineering.
I asked Bill, you've been dreaming about this for 50 years, so what's changed? And he said his son Talon pointed out, Dad, you have the money, you have the time, so what are you waiting for?
I was reading a periodical and I saw a kit plane of a Sopwith Camel, and that was my big chance to build one. And I remember putting it down and thinking, I'm going to build that. And the picture in that magazine, by the way, I didn't realize was this actual aircraft. A friend of mine, John Hall, called up and said, let's get out of here, let's go somewhere. And I said, where are we going? And he said, just clear your calendar, we're going somewhere. So we talked about California, we talked about Florida, and the weather wasn't good for those places, so we ended up in Dayton, Ohio. And US Air Force Museum is there, there's a rich heritage, the Wright brothers flew from there. So we're sitting in the hotel room trying to think of what we could do. And I said, you know, the guy who built the original Sopwith Camel kit in 2010 is somewhere in Ohio, I don't know where he is. We should give him a call, his name is Russ Turner. Turns out that he's a half an hour away from our hotel room. And he answered the phone and chatted with me like he was a long lost friend. So we hopped in the rental car, we drove out to see Russ, we drank some of his beer, and we talked about the plane, and he says to me, you know, I'm thinking about selling. And by the end of that evening, we had agreed on a price. We drove down, my son and I, Talon, to pick up the plane. Russ said to me, look, I want to start it up and show it to you, make sure that everything's working. So Russ went to start up the plane.
Go ahead, clear.
And there was a bang.
Spin it again.
That was the engine seizing. Russ said, you know, take it back to Winnipeg, have a look at it with your mechanic, see what needs to be done, and we'll sort it out then. Changing an engine is going to be significant. It's going to change the weight and balance, and it's a significant change to the aircraft. So right now, I am into the aircraft for about the price of a brand new SUV. It turns out that the engine needs to be replaced, and I go with the Lycoming engine. And I set out to do what turned out to be major modifications to the aircraft. And I've got to figure out over the next 2 years how to do it. I'm not a mechanic. I am a private pilot. I have some basic mechanical skills, but for the most part, I have to learn as I go. But if you break it down into component parts and just take it one day at a time and figure out each thing that you're doing, you can get through it.
They want to know what's happening, what's going on with that. But I just tell them I'm rapping, just go along with that.
When you have a dream that he's had since he was 3, that day is a big day. I could tell that he was tense, and I tried to, give him space.
2 years after bringing it home to Canada, I've spent about 850 hours rebuilding this aircraft, and at some point in time, you have to fly the plane. The actual day of the flight, everything was going for plan, and I have to admit I almost wished that something would go wrong and we could call it off, because I had built up almost 50 years of anticipation and really not knowing if I was up to it.
Yeah, 47, maintain visual separation with Southwest, wind 2108, runway 1 left of Bravo, cleared for takeoff.
Left of Bravo, cleared for takeoff, yeah.
1013, last way start, runway 1 right, line of point 473 on the parallel side.
Sierra 3561, speed up on Bravo, please. The Mariner United off your left, exit 81. Appreciate it. American maintenance point heavy, right.
I'm staring down the runway. It seemed like time stopped. I remember pushing the throttle forward and thinking, okay, now I'm committed. The tail came up off the ground beautifully, and I remember pulling back on the stick, and just the first 5 feet of accelerating into the air, it was everything you'd hope for. I got 50 feet in the air, and the ailerons completely seized, and I had no way of controlling the roll of the aircraft. I found that if I kicked the rudder, I could pick up a wing with a rudder. I was already past the end of the runway, and I had to figure out what was wrong with the aircraft and what I could do to fix it well in the flight. So now I've gone from mechanic mode to test pilot mode.
09, contact departure.
The radio got kind of staticky, and then we kind of lost touch.
Verify, then the on the bridge area then.
What I surmised during the flight, which later turned out to be true, is that I had rigged the ailerons so they were slightly up in the airflow. So as the airspeed picked up on the aircraft, it pushed the ailerons down, which jammed the wires that connect up to the ailerons. What I found after a little bit of experimenting is as soon as I slowed down below 65 miles an hour, the ailerons came back and I could control the aircraft just fine. So I went back to my test cards, tested the things that you need to test on the first flight, and then set up for my approach. I'm not used to flying an aircraft where you're this height, and I actually touched down before I was expecting to, and I bounced my first landing. And I remember when the tail came down and I came to a stop on the runway, it was such a great feeling to know that you had spent 2 years of your life doing something, you'd accomplished that goal, and I was looking forward to enjoying a steak dinner with friends. So after the excitement of the initial flight died down, I flew to a town called Starbuck. This was the first flawless flight that I had of it, and everything was going exceedingly well. As I approached into Winnipeg, the wind had shifted slightly, and I was using a different runway than I had departed on. Earlier that week, there had been a lot of rain, and some of the rain had puddled onto the other runway, and my wheels were sinking into the mud.
I was climbing a gooseneck, and I get this text on the inReach.
My partner was off climbing a mountain, and I sent her a text saying, "I'm okay, I crashed the airplane, I think I can fix it." The story of rebuilding it is another story that takes a long time and a lot of effort. It was well worth it, but it is the excitement of sharing it with other people that has more than exceeded my expectations.
Gotta find a way to make a set of changes I don't mind.
Flying an experimental aircraft takes courage. Climbing back in after a crash, that takes a maverick. It wasn't the dream Bill pictured, but this experience brought him closer to the fighter pilots he's always admired.